everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts. Even though they're making fun of me, I still think they're fabulous.
It's me, Rob. It's Diana.
And it's me, your friend, Jackie.
That was more threatening than you usually say it, Jackie. What's going on? Everything okay?
You know, it's grab bag time.
It's grab bag time. That's right. It's grab bag. It's grab bag time. But before...
Grab bag with the big old trash bag.
Before we talk about grab bag, we probably should talk about what this podcast is, which is...
If we must.
A behavior analytic podcast. Meaning... we like to talk about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research. Most weeks on ABA Inside Track, we pick a topic in the field of behavior analysis and we discuss some recent or really relevant research articles about that topic. But not this week, because this episode is a multiple of 12, which we have arbitrarily decided is our grab bag episode. So a grab bag episode, unlike other episodes, it's a hoi polloi of articles. You see, we print out every article ever created and we put it in a giant bag and we shake it up and we pull out an article. Whatever you pull out, you have to talk about. It could be an article about great technology regarding, horseshoes, blacksmithing.
I suppose
it could be anything.
I mean,
really.
I would actually be excited to get that article.
We've been pretty fortunate that they've usually been related to behavior analysis, but you never know. This could be the time.
Fortunate in that when we pick it up, it just, by osmosis through our fingertips, we know all the knowledge within that article and then can talk about it immediately.
It's
right.
Pretty much special power.
This is our 10th grab bag episode, so we've gotten pretty good.
We're almost out of the multiples of 12 that I have memorized.
Oh, well, you only got, you 144. And then after that,
after that, I don't know. So 12,
no man's land.
12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108, 120, 132, 144. But after that, who knows?
There's no way to know.
There's no way to know.
There's no way to find out. Maybe some listener will write in and tell us the multiples of 12 past 12. But in any case,
this is number 10.
This is number 10.
What?
Which means we're going to space. That's what you do, the 10th one.
Always.
Go to space. So we've got our grab bag. We've tied it to the ceiling to signal space. And who's going first tonight with our grab bag? Diana?
I'm going where no woman has gone before.
That's not true.
Into this trash bag on the ceiling.
Oh, okay. That might be true. I thought you were going to say space, and that happened already.
Fine.
So,
cool.
Go for it, Diana. Float up to the ceiling. We've sucked all the air out, so it's there's no gravity in here. That's not how gravity works at all. I explained that really wrong.
There's no sound.
There's just no sound, and we're dead because we can't breathe.
All right, I've already found my article.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, it was on the top, actually.
Oh, that's so nice.
I know.
Which is weird because, it'd be one thing if we're on the ground, but since we've tied the bag to the ceiling because it's, space themed, how did it get to the bottom, actually, of the bag, right?
We'll never get to the bottom of this.
That's crazy.
Do you want to know what it's called? Okay. It is an article from Behavior and Social Issues, which is not a journal that we've talked about too much, but I'm excited about social issues. Mm-hmm. And the title of the article is A Behavioral Economic Approach to Green Consumerism, Demand for Reusable Shopping Bags.
Ooh.
And it's by Kaplan, Gelino, and Reed.
Why'd you choose this one?
Oh, it was on the top. So I grabbed it. Yeah, that's why.
That's the story. We're sticking to it.
But I am really excited to talk about it because I have taken an interest of late in sustainability research. Got myself some bamboo forks.
You do. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's actually an important area and an area that's really well suited to behavior analytic intentions. So I'm really fortunate that I got this article.
Wow.
Now,
it's almost like we chose it ahead of time.
No, I can't imagine that would be the case. Now, you guys may not feel so fortunate because this article is about sustainability research, but it's also behavioral economics.
I like behavioral economics.
So I am taking a little bit of a spacewalk here in that I have never discussed behavioral economics on this program, nor really in other contexts.
You should come and teach my class one day.
So I will do my best to get us through this, but I think that what they're looking at is pretty relevant and interesting too. So traditionally, a lot of the research in behavioral economics has centered around looking at pharmacological abuse and then prevention of said drug abuse. But there are other ways that you could use the field of behavioral economics, certainly, to conduct behavior analytic-based research. And some of that could include looking at research into other types of consumer models for how well general consumers might tolerate or be willing to engage in behavior that's different from behavior that they've engaged in the past. And that's where the idea of looking at quote unquote green consumer behavior, right? So sustainability related purchasing or sustainability practices might come into play. So you could use the behavioral economics model of basically how likely are you to do this thing given this certain set of parameters, and then varying those parameters and looking at how behavior might change, but applying it to the area that we are hopefully all interested in, which is the environment, and how we can maybe make changes to our behavior in that capacity.
That sounded really good.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks. All right. So there's two things that they discuss in this article that you want to know about. And I'm going to give you like their quoted descriptions of them. So the first is delay discounting, which you may have heard of before. And the way that they describe it is, quote, the extent to which a reward is devalued due to its delayed receipt, right? So you might want the thing right now and be willing to pay X amount of money for it right now. But if it were delayed until a certain point in the future, how much money might you pay for it then, right? Or how long would you be willing to wait to get X amount of money? Mm-hmm. And that can vary depending on the value of the item or of the money and the wait time as well. So there's been a lot of research done in that area. They're going to apply that in some ways to the question they're asking today. And then the other term that you want to know is operant demand. So this is, and I quote, the extent to which an organism defends its free operant consumption of a commodity amidst increasing constraints.
Okay.
You got that?
I think so.
Right. So if you're living in your happy bubble and you are freely consuming whatever the things are that you like to consume, right? What do you like to consume, Rob?
Potato chips?
Mm-hmm.
Cheez-Its.
Tortilla chips.
Cheez-Its are good. Yeah. Salsa.
Some cool American. Yeah. Right. So in your free feeding capacity, you consume lots of cool American and barbecue.
300% of my total body weight. Yeah, you know.
Types of potato chips. But the question is, what if the price of those chips were to change, right? So instead of being on sale for 2 for $6, suddenly they were 2 for $20 instead. How likely would you be to continue to purchase and consume those items, and would that change depending on the availability of those items? So that's what the constraint piece is. So it could be a monetary value, but it could also be some other type of environmental constraint on access to that item, right? So what they're looking for here is, what's the point at which there's a switch over from saying, I still want this item and I'm going to pay X amount for this item, to, whoa, that is too much and this is no longer valuable to me. So there's kind of like a sweet spot that you're looking for from a consumer or economic perspective.
So
right?
operant demand is the cost of this item has gone up in many examples, whereas the delay discounting would be like, I have to wait for them to ship this to me.
2 days.
It's not worth, these cool American chips aren't worth it anymore.
Yeah. So there's been some research using delay discounting to evaluate sustainable practices. A couple that they threw out there that folks could certainly look up would be Berry and colleagues in 2017, and then Kaplan, Reed, and McKercher in 2014. So a few people have started to look at this. There's also some comparisons here with operant demand research that's looked at fuel economy pricing. And some of you folks may remember when the price of gasoline really ballooned back in about 2010, I want to say, right? Mm-hmm. So as an aside, one of our sons brought home homework last night, and all the examples were about gas, and all the gas cost $4 a gallon. And the examples, I was like, I bet she wrote these in 2010. Yeah. She's still using the same examples. All right. But anyways, some research has looked at fuel economy pricing to do the same exact thing, right? So how important is it to purchase gasoline, and how much would you be willing to spend to purchase gasoline? And that differs from other commodities that may not be as necessary for us to purchase. So you're going to see difference in elasticity of the demand depending on necessity of the product. And research has also looked at some of these similar types of comparisons using other products that are a little bit more quote unquote luxury, I guess one would say, like what would one pay for alcohol? What would one pay for marijuana, cigarettes, indoor tanning, right? So some things that have some short-term reinforcers, but long-term punishers, one might say, right? So they kind of wanted to look at a comparison similar to that, but for environmental products that are different from what we're used to, right? So if we are historically sort of holding on to those creature comforts that we're used to, right? So like the convenience of plastic shopping bags, let's say, that we've always had, but they're not good for the environment. Looking at how willing are we to hold on to those versus making a change to something that's more sustainable, depending on the price point of that new sustainable item.
Sure, that makes sense.
Which is an important social question to be asking, because we have made this shift in our society saying, oh, everyone should be using reusable shopping bags. But there are some economic components in there that perhaps haven't been evaluated.
I feel like all the stores just put my using plastic shopping bag behavior on extinction by not having plastic shopping bags anymore. And not telling me until I had a bunch of cartload of crap that I had nowhere to put them. Thanks, stores.
Well, that's a question too, right? So sometimes places will have bags for purchase. And that's another question, is how much does it cost to purchase like a paper bag versus purchase a reusable shopping bag? And where's the price point difference there, right? Mm-hmm. So which one's better for the environment? Which one's better for the consumer's economy perspective versus the store's economic perspective, which is not the question they're asking here, but is a good question to ask. So what they wanted to do here was really take a look at operant demand perspective to say, how much would people pay for reusable shopping bags is basically the question that we're talking about
50 cents.
Well, hold on. I'm going to tell you more. But the reason why they asked
spoiled the article.
No, you didn't. Not yet. So they said this could help us in understanding how we should sort of think about a pricing structure for sustainability items. It could help in the promotion of sustainability products for those who are interested in sort of the market for these. And also, it's kind of a new area for ABA to get into, so it could help disseminate behavior analysis. So that was their rationale, I guess you could say, for what they were doing. Because what they were doing was largely this type of translational behavior economic research, right? So they're just asking people these questions. How much would you pay for something? But they're not going out there and actually having people purchase the item. So it's all sort of this hypothetical exercise, if you will. The participants that they had were 76 undergraduates in an introductory behavioral science course.
Okay. I would have liked it better if it was 76 moms.
76 trombones. Just kidding.
What do undergraduates know about buying groceries?
Don't do my limitations before I get there. They received 0.5% of extra credit for their participation. Everyone did this in 30-minute sessions on a computer. And that's all you need to know about that. They had two things that they did. The first was called the HPT, or the hypothetical purchase task. And this was done on a system that asked them questions and then recorded their data called Qualtrics.
I like that name.
Yep. And then they did a survey after that called the NEPS, which was the New Ecological Paradigm Scale.
Yo, man, this is like a new ecological paradigm.
It's a new paradigm. And for that, they had 15 questions that they answered on a Likert type scale with their opinions on different environmental factors. But the HPT, the hypothetical purchase task, was really the core of what they were looking at here. So for each participant, they read a vignette to them, which I'm going to read to you now. You ready?
I'm ready.
And I'm going to answer it.
Story time.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if you can answer. Okay. In the questionnaire that follows, we would like you to pretend to purchase reusable shopping bags. Imagine that you and your friends are on vacation in a city far away from where you live and are picking up groceries at a supermarket. This supermarket is locally owned and operated and not available in your hometown. Upon entering the supermarket, you are offered the chance to buy and use reusable shopping bags instead of using the store's paper or plastic ones. These reusable bags are not available at the checkout. The following questions ask how many bags you have purchased at various prices. These reusable bags are standard size and hold approximately the same amount as paper or plastic ones. Assuming that you do not bring your own bags with you and that you need to purchase about a week's worth of groceries, about $100 worth. You will only be at the supermarket once this week and will not be able to reuse the bags at the supermarket ever again. You cannot use one of your friend's bags.
What kind of brigadoon supermarket is this?
These are the rules of the game. Also, assume that the bags you're about to purchase are for your use only. In other words, you can't sell the bags or give them to anyone else.
I don't want it.
I don't want these bags. I don't want to schlep these bags home. I'm on vacation.
They just want you need to purchase the amount of bags you need. Okay. Is what they're trying to say. You
but
can't
I
share
also
them,
could get
you can't
paper
buy
or
them
plastic
later.
bags, they said in the story. So because I don't want to have to bring these stupid bags home with me in my luggage, I won't buy any. There you go. What do you think of that
Well, thanks
story?
for ruining their study, Rob. You're the outlier data point. Okay, so it just says everything you buy is for your own personal use today and in the future at your local supermarket. Please respond to the questions honestly. And then the questions were, how many bags would you purchase or take if they were X amount each? And the amounts were $0, 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1, $1.25, and then $2, $2.50, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, and $9.
$9 for a bag?
Yes.
Nope.
That bag better be made of gold.
I don't think
They
I
don't
want
say
any.
what they're made of.
Gold.
They're not paper or plastic, and that's all we know. I pictured them
Hemp.
being
Probably
canvas. A nice
They're
canvas
They're
bag.
hemp bags.
Hemp with a little CBD
Maybe.
oil around them.
Maybe.
They're that magical. The $9 one is infused with CBD oil.
Once you leave, the mist of the grocery store vanishes.
Ooh.
Was it ever really there?
It was a mirage.
We just got these reusable bags at that grocery store down the street. But that grocery store's burnt out 20 years ago. All their hemp reusable bags caught on fire.
They were so nice. Okay. So that's all they did, right? That they just asked all these college students, how many bags would you get if it cost 50 cents each? How many bags would you get
All
if it
the
cost
bags.
$9 each?
One glorious
But you do
CBD
have to
bag.
fit all your weekly groceries in there. Your $100 worth of groceries. Okay.
I don't know. I get like, if they were free, I guess I would get 4.
Are you fitting $100 worth of groceries in 4 bags?
What are the grocery store prices? Because like an Aldi
Right, if
shopping trip, I could get them in 4 bags. I just did that like last week. If I'm going to like, Wegmans or like Whole Foods.
You only need 1 bag.
Yeah, I need like, I just hold it in my hand. Buy 2 items.
I'll just buy this container of fruit. I'm done. Okay. So they
Buy
got
this hemp milk.
what do we $54?
Also with CBD oil.
Okay. So that's all they did. Those were the data. Next, they used the exponential demand model equation to calculate the breakpoint for their operant demand condition here. Okay. I'm not going to read you the equation. I'm just going to tell you that there were several factors important to this equation in determining how many items would be purchased based on these following factors. How much would be purchased if the item were free? The range of quality that was purchased across participants, the price per unit, and the change in elasticity of purchasing across price. So what was the range of purchasing at any particular price point? Okay. So they do this in order to fit the demand curve and figure out what's called the break point, which I kind of mentioned earlier. So the break point is the point at which the cost for the item is too high and purchasing or consumption of that item is going to decrease after that point in time. So the name actually makes sense, right? Because it's the point in the graph, the curve where purchasing was highest and then it falls off after that point in time. So you look at that and say, okay, people were buying it up until it cost this much money. After that, it's too much. So for comparison, different types of items are going to have different breakpoints, certainly, but they're also going to have different elasticity as well. So an item that is going to continue to be needed, even if it's at a higher price point, is going to be less elastic and have a higher breakpoint than a lower demand item, basically. So like my comparisons were like gasoline versus bundt cakes. You're going to continue to pay more for gasoline even as the price increases. Jackie's disagreeing.
I am. If they were like $5 for gas, but $6 for a bun cake, I'm going for the bun cake.
But what if gas were $50 a gallon and bundt cakes were $50 each?
That would be hard.
Right, because you need the gas,
I
right?
also need the bun cake.
I hear you. I hear you, girl.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I might have to quit my job if it's $50
You're like, I have to stay home and eat bundt cakes.
Yeah,
So-
sorry.
Or insulin versus really expensive sweatpants, but that look just like regular price sweatpants, right?
Oh.
Those likely would have different elasticity and different breakpoints as well, right? And finally, because it is the season, Girl Scout cookies versus 3 copies of Time Cop,
Oh, yeah.
right?
It's cheaper to get 3 copies of Time Cop than 1 copy of Time Cop.
Well, that is a different comparison entirely. Yes, but also chances are if the price of Girl Scout cookies increased, which it has, you're going to continue to buy Girl Scout cookies because they're just so darn good, right?
But I
Now,
wouldn't
gasoline
keep buying
versus
Time
Girl
Cop?
Scout cookies, I don't know. I mean, most people don't need 3 copies of Time Cop, but to each their own. Okay. So you kind of get the point of the comparison there,
Sure.
right? Okay. So they calculated 2 breakpoints, in fact. One that was the highest price at which a bag was purchased, and then one which was the first price at which the bag was not purchased anymore. So this would vary by individual, but then they took the mean of each of those. So basically, the mean of the breakpoint that was the highest price at which a bag was purchased was $3. And the mean breakpoint, which was the first price at which a bag was not purchased, was $4.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, on average, right? Yeah. So they were like, $4 is just too much. I can't pay for all these bags.
Yeah.
They also made a comparison with, remember that ecological survey that people took? Mm-hmm. So if people had lower ratings on that, meaning they weren't as worried about the environment or didn't sort of see themselves as like crunchy people, I guess. If they had a low score there, then they were more likely to take free bags, but also to pay less for them when they had to buy them. Mm-hmm. And then the inverse was true for folks with high crunchiness factor. They were more likely to take fewer free bags and also pay more for them. Which is kind of interesting, but I sort of thought of that as like they value the bags more, right? So they're willing to pay more for them, but also they don't want to waste them just because they're free.
Right.
So that was my interpretation there. So overall, they found that the data for this fit the model well of the equation that they used, and they called it like a, quote, proof of concept, that you could apply this demand equation to this type of consumer question that hadn't been done very much in the past. They also gave us the take-home point, which was, as a reusable bag provider, how much should I charge for my bags, right? Because they gave you the break point, but you may not really want to charge that much because at a slightly lower point, people will buy more. So the highest price, according to this study, that a bag seller should price their items is $2.
Oh, I was going to say $2.50.
$2 each. After that, participants are likely to decrease the number of bags purchased because buying becomes more elastic. So, and you should expect to make about $6 per customer with this model.
Oh.
Limitations. This was a hypothetical study, as delay discounting studies are, operant demand studies are. Also, these were college students in the Midwest. Like you said, Rob, they probably had little experience.
What do they know?
Doing purchasing for, let's say, a family. I would love to see this with a different population, maybe in like a really eco-friendly big city, maybe with consumers with more expendable income who also might be, crunchy oriented. Would they have the same break point? Might they be willing to spend more money, etc.? So it's a really interesting question, and I'm excited about thinking about this type of research moving forward. And I learned a little bit about behavioral economics.
Yeah. You're like a regular freakonomics over here.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Thanks.
All right. So now we know how much to charge for reusable bags. So if you're interested, I will be selling reusable bags right after the show.
$2.
For $2. Not $2.50 like some people recommend. I'm going to go out of business. $2.
Too high.
All right. Well, that's our first grab bag episode, but don't worry, we've got plenty more of those on the way. Well, 2 exactly. We'll be right back with those.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there!
And And we are back with our fabulous grab bag number 10. Grab bag in space. All right. So before we get back to our last two grab bag articles, I want to remind all you listeners out there that ABA Inside Track is ACE approved. By listening to the show, you can apply for 1 learning credit. Wow. Ooh, ah. Ooh.
I just really want a learning credit.
I like to learn and I like credits. All you need to do is listen to the show, then go to abainsidetrack.com/get-CEUs, C-E-U-S. And you're going to need to put in some information, though, including 2 secret code words that we've hidden throughout the episode. I'm going to give you the first one now. It is Apollo. A-P-O-L-L-O. Apollo. Like Apollo 11, you know, the rocket ship that took... Well, actually, I don't remember if Apollo 11... I think it was the code name of the ship that went to the moon, to be pedantic. I might also be wrong about that. I learned about it one summer. But regardless of my knowledge or lack thereof of space travel, the code word's still Apollo. All right, so let's get back into our grab bag. So now it is my turn. I'm going to float up to the ceiling. Here I go. Whee! Can you hear me? I'm upside down now.
Wow, I see you upside down.
Let me get this one. Ooh,
You're
man.
like OK Kid right now. Isn't that a band that does...
OK Kid?
Is OK Go.
OK Go.
OK Kid.
It's not a bad band name. All right, here we go. I'm pulling out. Whoa, it's floating around. Let me catch it. Ah, got it. Oh, here's my article. Oh, man, it's long. Oh, well, I hope I can quickly read it. It's called Efficacy and Social Validity of Procedures for Improving Conversational Skills of College Students with Autism by Mann and Karsten from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis 2020. It's a recent article. So... Speaking of college kids and reusable bags, college kids and social skills, right?
Ooh, I love that.
The two don't have anything to do with each other, I think. It was an article that I saw and said, that's an article I got to read, because certainly one of the topics that we've come to a few times is preparing individuals with disabilities for life after school, specifically social skills that are needed after school. And especially in the population of college students with autism spectrum disorder, there are a lot of concerns. You know, are they properly being prepared to interact socially in ways that are going to allow them to maintain, you know, really meaningful employment, or to the best of their, you know, abilities to maintain jobs? And also, are they going to just, you know, have a good time socializing with people in college? One of the unfortunate statistics that this article starts with is that students with ASD are much less likely than students with other types of disabilities to graduate from college or to complete college. They're 8 to 23% less likely than students who have a speech and language impairment, students with learning disabilities, or even students with emotional disturbance to graduate from college. And the question always comes up, why could that be? And one of the hypotheses is, well, college is a stressful time in which you are spending a lot of time interacting with lots of different people. And if you are struggling with those interactions, it's going to make a lot of sort of the defense mechanisms for, you know, dealing with the heavy course load, the level of independence needed. It's just going to be one more challenge that you have to face rather than something that would be a benefit or a positive of being in the college setting. So looking at previous research, the authors, you know, did a lot of review looking at students with ASD. And you know, there are plenty of articles talking about how students with ASD often have a hard time with the give and take of a conversation that leads to a lot more bullying than, you know, an average neurotypical student, social rejection. There was a study by Little in 2001 looking at young adults with ASD, reporting that they had been shunned by a peer at least once within the past year. And that was 94% of respondents. So almost every respondent said, this is something that has happened to me in the past year. So when we talk about a conversation, I'm going to quote a little Skinner from the article. It's a verbal exchange where listener provides stimuli that should partially control a speaker's response, which again, you know, just thinking about what does a conversation look like? Well, you know, the speaker speaks and then the listener changes their behavior based on what is being said.
Okay.
And this goes back and forth. There are certainly other variables in the environment that might influence how a conversation flows or how people respond in a conversation. Certainly things like fluctuations in motivation to have the conversation. You have different schedules of reinforcement occurring at all times. So the example they give which I think is very true for the modern era, is the idea of, it's nice to have this conversation with you, but my phone is also really fun to look at as well.
Sure,
and at some point, I might want to look at that rather than look at you. And then certainly things like the rules, our own rules for conversation. So certain topics that we do or do not feel comfortable talking about. Then there's also what are kind of our own contingency-shaped conversational repertoires. So, do we use a lot of slang? Do we use big vocabulary words? All of these things are going to impact how our conversations flow, how our conversations go, how much people want to talk to us or don't want to talk to us. Now, there had been a previous study, and I think I'd read this study back in the day by Peters and Thompson, which had taught children with ASD to tact whether their partner was interested or disinterested in the conversation that they were having. And what they found was just teaching someone, look, you've identified that this person is not interested in talking with you, did not actually change conversation behavior to sort of improve the conversation or to change the partner from disinterested to interested. That required behavior skills training. So teaching the students, this is how you change a topic. This is how you ask a question to pull someone back into a conversation. And over time, they were able to teach participants to look at their partner's facial expression. So their partner was eye rolling or kind of looking away, looking at their watch.
I just eye rolled for Rob.
Oh, did you? I wasn't even paying attention. I'm trying to look at my notes and talk and have I'm not really having a conversation with you, Jack. I'm having a conversation with our listeners.
Yeah.
I can't pick up any of their non-vocal cues.
Yeah, I tried to throw it down, listeners, but it didn't work.
So what kind of came out of this and what the authors of this article discussed are a lot of our non-vocal movements or non-vocal cues really just concealed demands. I'm rolling my eyes because what I really want to say is this conversation is super boring. Please change the topic. But instead, I just kind of roll my eyes. Now, what's important when you respond to concealed demands is not just that you understand concealed demands occurring, but also that you respond to the concealed demand in the way that you're actually providing some amount of, reinforcer to your speaker. So the example they give, which I think is very funny, is the individual who says, "Oh, I'm freezing." And then, the good response would be, "Oh, sure, let me turn up the heat," or, "Oh, let me get you a blanket." But it's certainly possible that your response to that kind of what seems like an intraverbal statement, "It's freezing," like, "Yes, it's winter." It's like, those two aren't going through too well. You're not reinforcing their concealed demand. Anyway, I said it's cold. You said it's winter. I gotta go. You're going to kind of minimize your value as a conversational partner if you're not responding to some of those concealed demands. Now, when we're looking at individuals with autism spectrum disorder, there's a concern that one of the reasons that some of these conversational skills might be difficult is that many individuals just might not have enough practice or opportunities to respond to these concealed demands before partners engage in avoidance. You didn't respond to my statement, or you responded in a way that was not what I was expecting. So this conversation is over. There's not really a chance to sort of fix that relationship or fix that conversation.
That's so true. Because I used to be horrible at identifying concealed demands.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Someone would be like, "It's cold in here." I'm like, "Yeah." And like, that's
you sure are ugly.
Right? It was hard.
Yeah.
For me.
Concealed demands can be tough.
As like a young person.
They can be tough. I mean, as a young person, I think even individuals who have, a lot of experience responding to concealed demands, sometimes like, am I supposed to say this? Am I supposed to say that? Because again, we have a lot of other environmental variables in a conversation. But again, at a bare minimum, do the researchers think that we could improve individuals with ASD's conversational skills if we taught better discrimination of conversational partner behavior? There's an additional complexity they discuss in that what possibly might be happening with individuals with ASD is some sort of restricted stimulus control, in that there's very limited range of behavior that is going to evoke a change in the conversational skills. So there might only be a few features that would signal to the individual with ASD to perform differently, to respond differently. There's also a lot of complexity in conversation. So again, they might be restricted to, when I see someone smile, this is a sign that they're enjoying the conversation. But how many conversations have we all had where we kind of do like that, like fakey, like anyway, smile, which is signaling, it's nice talking with you. I have other things to do though, so I want this conversation to end. Is it possible that many individuals with ASD might have that restricted stimulus control and see a smile means continue a conversation, which again, if you're responding to a smile by continuing a conversation, and that was one of those, no, I want to end this conversation smiles, you're going to seem very threatening. You're going to seem like you're harassing the other individuals. And certainly there's a lot of survey data, reporting that many individuals with ASD often are considered to be more likely to be rated as harassing or threatening, or, they just won't leave me alone. Or even stalking behavior, I think, is often attributed to individuals with ASD more than neurotypical peers. So, what do we do? Well, the authors decided, let's look at a differential observing response to sort of help our participants learn to respond differently, emit a different response specific to the different discriminative stimulus arrangements that will happen in a conversation. Now, with a conversation, one of the tasks they wanted to see is, could we use what they called self-questioning, in which the individual would sort of ask themselves a question. And they did this in the practice, like ask, so what is my partner trying to tell me? And therefore, how should I respond? And there have been other studies when the kind of self-questioning has improved, some sort of various responses, often with multiply controlled interverbals. That's kind of where some of this research came from. So combining differentially observing response with the sort of self-questioning and then training of these specific stimulus events, can we improve the conversational skills of individuals with ASD? So again, that's our purpose. Use self-questioning, improve conversation skills. So the participants were 2 male college students they mentioned that the students are diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which again is no longer in the DSM. However, since these were adults, since that was their diagnosis originally, the researchers continue to use that as their diagnostic label. There was Jack, who'd been referred by Campus Disability Services to need additional support in this area. He reported that he often misunderstood social situations. A lot of people seemingly had reported that his conversational skills were malicious, or the way he interacted with people was malicious, which he was very concerned about. And a lot of other individuals described him as persistent in his social situations. And he himself felt he was not satisfied with his social life on campus. Jordan actually approached the researchers themselves. He did a recent poor employment experience where he'd actually been fired because of poor coworker conversations.
That's a bummer.
I know. He noted that he often got disoriented in social situations, that he was somewhat satisfied with his social life on campus, but reported it could be better. So 2 to 4 times a week, we have our sessions. Overall, this study used a concurrent multiple baseline design, testing this use of this self-questioning training procedure. And they looked at the cumulative responses of the 2 participants across 3 stimulus conditions. So basically what they set up was 3 different types of situations in which a conversational partner was demonstrating some level of disinterest. And by identifying which level of disinterest and providing the appropriate response to that level of disinterest, they could regain the Confederate peers' attention and continue the conversation. So the 3 different stimulus conditions they were looking at were confirm availability, invite contribution, and change topic. So confirm availability is, pretty much what you'd expect to see when you have a conversation with someone. Is the person looking at something else? So my partner is visually oriented to something else in the environment. And should I ask them, the question you're going to ask yourself is, are they available to talk to me, or are they able to talk to me right now? So if someone's looking at their phone and you just jump into conversation, most people don't like that.
And
so you should probably ask, hey, are
eyes.
you okay? Or do you have a second to talk?
Yeah.
The invite contribution is sort of what you'd expect when you're having like the worst small talk ever, where someone is talking about a topic and, you're continuing to look at your partner, but you're not saying anything. You're sort of just staring and doing that, that kind of nodding. And in this case, the question was, is this person joining me in the conversation? And you could regain that individual's attention by asking them a question about the current topic. So what do you think about the current political climate, kind of thing? And then finally, change topic. And this is when a partner emits a disinterested behavior. After they had already been asked, would you like to talk about this? Let me ask you a question about this topic. So sort of what you'd expect to see when you're in like, oh my God, I can't believe these people have been talking about Star Trek for the past hour. Like, I'm looking at my watch. I'm totally checked out. And the question is this person interested in talking about this topic? And then the individual could regain their interest by talking about something different or asking a question about a different topic. What's your favorite Star Trek spinoff? Probably wouldn't count in that situation, but
I'd be like, I don't know.
this is still not working for me. So what occurred in terms of the overall procedure is the experimenters ran these sort of probes with their partner, and they'd have probes where the partner showed interest, and they'd have probes where the partner showed disinterest. And they sort of did them in a 3-to-1 ratio of disinterested to interested. Now, unlike in real life, if Jack or Jordan engaged in the correct response based on the stimulus event, then the peer would give them attention again. So there was no mixed signals of even though they did the right thing to regain attention based on sort of the environmental events or the individual's response, they still always got back attention and were able to continue the conversation. So there were these short little conversations. At some point in the conversation, the Confederate would look disinterested potentially or give some sort of stimulus change. If the Jack or Jordan participants, if they then responded appropriately, great. Conversation continued for the rest of that probe. If not, the conversation ended after about a minute. Now, they went through all the process, and I think one of the reasons this is a longer article, but is interesting, is how they found what counts as a disinterested cue. They did a lot of videotaping, did a lot of kind of social validity checks of like, what do you think of this video clip, undergraduate? Is this interested, disinterested? And they used that to craft how the Confederate would look so that it was, again, as close to real life as possible. The disinterested behaviors were non-vocal cues always. So looking at their device, looking at a book, slack posture, and then vocal cues, which again were the absence of vocal cues. So, not asking questions, as well as vocal cues in which there was actually, vocalization. So short answers like, yep, I like that. Fine. Those kinds of short answers. Interested behavior would be signaled by non-vocal cues like I'm nodding my head, I'm smiling, I'm laughing. And then vocal cues. I'm asking a lot of questions about the topic you're talking about, or I answer you with these long, elaborate, detailed answers. So those show I'm interested. So like I said, these probes are in 3 minutes in length. If the correct response to that concealed man came through, great. We continue the conversation for the rest of the 3 minutes with lots of interested behavior. If not, you get about a minute of the disinterested behavior. After that, if the correct response was not emitted, you get another minute of disinterest, and then boom, that's the end of the conversation. Baseline, we always started with some period of interest, and then after random 15, 30, 45, or 60 seconds, I'm suddenly not interested in your conversation anymore.
I kind of see that.
Yeah. And then certainly, depending on which condition they were working on at the time, they would demonstrate that level of disinterest. They also started with some problem detection probes to make sure that both of the participants could detect disinterested behavior. Jack had a hard time, so he got some training in that. It was pretty simple. They just sort of tucked a piece of paper signaling, this conversation video I'm watching, things aren't going well or things are going well. They also wanted to look at what they call the solution provision. So are the way that you kind of repair this conversation currently in the participant repertoire? So they'd read these sort of general statements that kind of describe the disinterested state and be like, what's an example of how you would do that? And, could they answer one? They wanted one example for each. It wasn't too complicated. They just needed to have something in the repertoire. Then they got into the actual treatment, which was the self-questioning training. And they pretty much just used behavioral skills training to correctly ask and then answer, to themselves. I mean, certainly with the experimenter, they were saying it out loud.
Right.
What's going on here? So, hey, what's going on? What are the functions? So the functions being, is this person available? Have they had the opportunity to contribute? Are they interested in talking about something else? So those are the questions you'd ask. So when you see disinterested behavior, identify which one it is, ask yourself the question, answer the question yourself, and then based on that answer, respond differently than you have been.
Did they say anything about whether, when they were saying it out loud during the training, that they practiced saying it quieter and quieter so that it wasn't creepy?
They did actually get to whether or not the participants were using this technique once they got out of kind of the lab or the practice setting. So they did talk about that a little bit, but no, they didn't specify, what kind of topography they're self-questioning.
Because that would be like, are they available? Like if someone was like standing next to you saying that?
Yeah. They started with the self-questioning when detecting disinterested behavior using video clips.
Yeah.
So they were kind of modeling it. So, the experimenters were modeling it, I should say. So they're looking at the video. At this point, it looks like they're checking their watch. So they seem like they're not interested in this. They're talking about something else. I would say, what are you interested in? And, so they were modeling that. And then, they did a lot of rehearsal trials. And they'd give corrective feedback if they asked the wrong self-question. They also gave descriptive feedback when they did the correct thing. Yes, you noticed that they were checking their watch before the conversation started. The right question to ask was, are you available? That was great. You did that. And they sort of do that, all the steps of BST at the beginning of each training session. Then they do those 4 rehearsal trials where, here you go, do your best. Jack took about 7 to 10 total rehearsal trials spread out across 2 to 3 sessions. Jordan took 3 to 6 trials and 1 to 2 sessions. And the range really has to do with which of the different conditions they were working on, because some were easier for the participants than others. After this, they did a peer-led probe, or they sort of sprinkled peer-led probes throughout. So instead of just doing the practice, they actually had a peer confederate come in and have a conversation. And then finally, the natural environment tests. So Jack was instructed to meet with an untrained and unfamiliar peer, although it was a peer who had been involved in research before, so they weren't worried that now this peer is going to go blab about like, oh, did you hear about Jack? He's in a special study. So they knew they could trust this peer. And they met in a coffee shop for 20 minutes and were told to spend the time getting to know each other. Jordan had 2 15 to 25-minute conversations with unfamiliar professors. He was told, meet with this professor, ask them about the classes they teach and their experience in the field. So pretty close to what you'd expect to see in a real conversation. So let's talk some results. Neither participant, after ensuring that they could identify the signs of disinterest and make up a solution for seeing those signs of disinterest, actually then engaged in the self-questioning behavior or in changing how their conversation approaches went. They needed to have this self-questioning training, and even when they did emit correct responses, it was pretty rare. Usually they emitted the incorrect response, so the wrong response for the different conditions. After the training in confirm availability, so as an individual available, you saw a nice jump in correct responses for both participants. You saw a lot fewer incorrect responses. You got pretty similar results for the invite contribution condition. So, hey, what do you think about this topic we're talking about? Jordan had a little bit more trouble with this one than Jack did, and then he actually did in some of the other conditions. And then the experimenters also saw generalization in the probes with the trained peers and in the natural environments. Now, again, this wasn't like they were now 100% always the best conversationalists ever. There were still errors created. However, there were less errors in conversation and more attempts to at least try to repair the conversation. Many of them were correct, though, again, some of them were not correct, but at least it was an improvement in the right direction for both participants. They had peers watch clips of Jack and Jordan's baseline videos and post self-questioning training videos and were given interested and disinterested probes in random orders, and they sort of had to rate. Both were rated somewhat bad or bad conversationalists in any of the baseline clips. The ratings improved in any of the post self-questioning training.
This part was weird for me because they were peers, right? Because then it kind of seems like it violates confidentiality.
Well, they were peers in the sense that I just generally wrote the word peers to refer to other college students.
But still, right? Like,
Yeah.
if they're on the same college campus, they have the potential to be friends.
Oh, I know that. Oh, where do I know that guy across the quad
Right?
from? Oh, from those videos of people with bad conversation
Yeah,
skills
I
I
don't
rated. I hear you.
I like it. I like the idea of doing the rating scale,
Yeah.
but I wish they would have just used someone that wasn't part of the university.
Yeah, no, that's true. So both participants, I think most importantly, felt that they had done better, and they rated these procedures as really effective for them, really helpful for them, really important for them. And overall, it took about 1.5 to 2.5 months, depending on which participant, to do all of this training. Now, Jackie, you mentioned earlier, this is a nice article, but it is packed with lots and lots of interesting topics related to conversation skills. I've already gone pretty long just in getting the basics out. But in regard to your question about were Jack and Jordan engaging in the self-questioning quieter and quieter, it wasn't really clear. I don't believe they did as much during the training, so certainly in talking with the peers, but they did talk about how they did some response latency analyses of their video clips. And it really didn't seem like they were taking longer to respond after the self-questioning training, which potentially points to they weren't doing the self-questioning once they got into the later probes, that they just were responding to the stimulus events. They also mentioned that their latency procedure could have been really crummy and they might have just missed out what was happening. But it doesn't seem like they were sort of whispering the questions to themselves, or at least there was nothing discernible in their data to point to they were, talking quietly to themselves or even engaging in like private verbal behavior regarding, the self questions. So great results here, but like in most social skills are super duper complex. So they really only targeted a few of the conversational behaviors that would need to be intact or engaged in fluently to be considered like a really good conversationalist. So for example, Jordan still got some poor ratings for his affect, his speech intonation, his eye contact. So these were all areas that he still could be rated by some individuals as not being as good of a conversationalist, though certainly improved from his original performance in these tasks. And then there's also the limitation of this was a study in which there was every time you engage in the correct response, you get your peer to rejoin you in the conversation. In real life, that's not how conversations work. Even if you do everything right, you still might have a bad conversation with somebody. So how much will this training maintain in the natural environment over time? There's no way to, well, there is a way to know, but there's no way to know from the article I have because it ended and there's no more follow-up data. So
You're not going to go
I'm not going to go. I guess we
break into the house of this primary researcher to find the
Probably.
data sheets.
I
to
suppose
find
I could
the
email
name of the informed
do
consent.
any more follow up there.
You don't want to do it my sneaky way?
No, I don't think so. So I certainly enjoyed it. I think the complexity in terms of the discussion and the overall, when you think about it, kind of the simplicity of like, wait a minute, why don't we just teach this discrimination of the procedure? So very enjoyable. And I'm glad that two individuals now feel much more confident in their abilities to have conversations. So that's what I got. Jackie, you're left. So your turn to
All
go into
right.
the bag.
Here we go. I pulled out something that I'm actually interested in. Shocking.
What? How does this keep
I-
happening?
Yeah, so I became interested in this topic when I went to vote in the primaries because
Get out the vote.
my voting precinct is in a senior citizen center.
Mm-hmm.
And so I walked in and I noticed that there was an odd arrangement in one of the rooms of chairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm interested in why the chairs might be that way. And although this article does kind of answer that, I was just like, I'm going to look at like nursing home research because I was in the nursing home. And so this one,
It's from Nursing Home Architectural Digest.
it's actually a magazine. No, this one is called Lounge Layout to facilitate communication and engagement in people with dementia.
I'm very interested in this article.
Yeah. And so I've also been thinking a lot about being old recently and
Thanks,
like,
Captain Bringdown.
I know, being old and like what it like have an experience of what it would be like to live in, like a nursing home or assisted living. The research says that people with dementia may not actually spend a lot of time engaged in activities if there's a large group setting because there's not a lot of support in a lot of nursing homes or assisted facilities, right? So the CNAs or the nursing assistants are really helping people get their basic self-care tasks done. And that may not leave them a ton of time to then help facilitate social interactions and leisure skills. And there's not a ton of money, no surprise, in nursing home. Like there's not a nursing home budget, where senior citizens get like special money for like activities. And, if you're by yourself a ton, that's probably going to have a really profound impact on your quality of life and your indices of happiness. And so
especially if you're an individual suffering from dementia, and that many of the things that you might have done to entertain yourself when you were alone might not be as reinforcing as they used to be.
Yeah. And so there has been a few studies looking at the effects of adding structure activities to nursing homes, and that's been really positive. And they showed an increase in indices of happiness. However, this might take a lot of time, staff effort, money, resource, and that's not always possible in every single nursing home. And so these authors really wanted to find a simple intervention that may help promote communication and overall happiness. And so they said, why don't we try to rearrange the room to program for more antecedent interventions? And this is where I got my answer. So in the introduction, they talk about why chairs are all along the edge of the room. And I never knew why. It's a risk to have them in the middle because you could trip on them.
Oh.
And so that's why most nursing homes have the chairs on the outside and not on the inside.
Oh, okay.
I know. But when the chairs are around the wall, it doesn't really leave a lot of space to have engagement with activities or other people. And so some ideas that the researchers had was if you face chairs together so that clients are looking at each other as if they were like eating dinner, they wouldn't have to turn their heads. They wouldn't have to turn their bodies. If they have those mobility issues or forget to use those mobility parts or whatever, if they don't remember how to turn their neck, this would be one way they could do that. And they say that research supports a specific layout to facilitate engagement, but rarely do people use the research, which is sad. They just rely on expert opinion like, don't want anyone to fall. Put everything around.
Pro tip, don't fall.
Right? So what they wanted to do here is they wanted to replicate previous research by Peterson and colleagues in 1977, and they found an increase in the communication when chairs were around tables, right, in activities so they just wanted to look at different layouts. So easy.
We've had this chair technology since the late 70s and no one's using it.
They evaluated 3 furniture layouts, chairs around the edges of the room, which was already happening.
Middle school dance.
Right? Chairs, like things that are layout to facilitate communication, like the chairs like across from one another. And then activity specific, where they have chairs around tables for specific activities like puzzles, magazine reading, TV watching, those sort of things. And so the setting was a little bit different because it was a 14-bed hospital ward and not a nursing care facility, but it was set up like a nursing care facility, and it was for adults with dementia. The adults had individual bedrooms. There was a garden, a dining room, and a lounge. Seems nice. The garden seems lovely. The lounge had chairs around tables, a variety of activities, a bay window, and a TV. I like that they put the bay window in there. And in this article...
Limitation. We don't always have bay windows in our...
And in the...
Lack of generality.
And in the article, one thing I loved is that they actually included all of the layouts.
I do love that.
Armchairs had like little crosses, and chairs were a different shade. So they thought about this beforehand.
Do you know when I was a child, I used to draw floor plans with furniture in them just for fun.
That is a kind of fun activity.
I never did that, and I'm scared of it, even now as an adult. But there was 10 women and 4 men, ages 60 to 85. All of them were ambulatory. 1 man had a walker. All of them were verbal, could speak in sentences. So that's important, right? So they recorded communication, and engagement, and indices of happiness. So communication just included when 2 clients with dementia, not a staff worker, engaging in jokes, questions, eye contact, body orientation, any sort of appropriate physical contact, that would be labeled as communication. Engagement with activities included if clients were manipulating the activities, looking at the TV, waiting for their turn, right? Just engaged. And indices of happiness was taken from Green and Reed's 1996 article, and they labeled that any vocalization or facial expression that may indicate happiness.
I did a graduate project where we talked about the indices of happiness.
Yeah, I did too. I actually love that article. I almost chose that article because I remembered it when I was in the nursing home. I was like, this is one of the first ones I read about nursing homes.
There's some good indices of happiness studies that like really break it down in pretty fine detail as far as like the facial movements that should count. So it's not just like, oh, they just looked happy.
No.
Like there's like a lot of detail. Yeah.
They're reading people. Of course they're happy. Who wouldn't be?
That's awesome. I would be happy to read people. I love people.
Law and Order's on. You know, we're all having a great time.
So they had 20-minute sessions with 10-second momentary time sampling where patients were rotated. So patients could leave the lounge and come to the lounge at any time, but every 10 seconds they moved to a different patient and then recorded so that they could account for all patients, movement within. So I liked that.
Okay.
They didn't make them move every 10 seconds.
No, they moved.
Like that's not very long.
That'd be so mean. These
like stand up, sit down.
You happy where you are? Doesn't matter. 10 seconds. Move it.
Yeah, so in order to have a session occur, at least 2 people had to be in the lounge, right? So they could go to that other person after that 10 seconds.
Fair.
And there would be a max of 14 if everybody was in the lounge at the same time.
The lounge was hopping.
Yeah, hopping lounge. So data were collected across 9 days. They had a max of 2 sessions per day. And if they had 2 sessions a day, they had 2 hours apart for each session. IOA was collected and it was good. They used a multi-element design with random number generator on how they would facilitate, lounge layout. So they fixed the room in one of the 3 ways, started the session after 15 minutes or more had elapsed to allow the participants to get into the room, settle in, see the difference. And then they started taking data. So again, the first layout was just chairs around the room. Second layout was activity specific, so that the sofa and the coffee table were near the TV. The dining room chairs were arranged around a table for puzzles. Armchairs were around a table with a magazine. And there was a table with dominoes. So they, activity specific.
I was going to ask if they were playing cards, but dominoes are good.
Dominoes
yeah.
are real good.
And then the small group layout where chairs were grouped around tables so clients could face one another and chat. So not surprising, communication was highest in the small group setting, followed by the activity-specific setting, with almost no communication with chairs around the edge. So how it's happening right now, not great.
Right.
Luckily for us, in our town, chairs were a little bit around the room, but not in all rooms. So that was nice. So engagement was highest in activity-specific. That's not surprising. Followed by small group. They were both on an increasing 10 with almost no engagement with chairs around the edge. So basically, chairs around the edge may be a good thing to do for preventing falls, but not a good for life happiness.
Did they talk at all about whether there's an actual statistic about the falls, or is it more just an assumption that, well, there's better chance of falls when there's objects in the way?
Yeah, they didn't, but I thought it was interesting, and that was one of my questions, is actually did they look at the rate of falls, right? Because if people are falling more with chairs in the middle, you might not want the chairs in the middle then. You might want to think about something different. But they didn't bring that up in the discussion, so that would be just something interesting.
I would be curious because if it's engagement is way up, but falls are 100%.
Right?
Okay, well we maybe this isn't gonna work.
Sorry, you're happy, but I can't have you breaking a leg, right? And then when they looked at the indices of happiness was very similar between small groups and activity specific, but it was never observed in chairs around the room.
There were none at all. God,
it was like. Sad.
That's really depressing.
Yeah.
It's sad kind of from a distance, but can you imagine if you were like in charge of setting up the nursing home leisure area and you're like, I'm doing this for everyone's safety. And then they read this article like, I've depressed all of the people under my care.
Yeah. So one thing to note, though, is that they did not take that on staff behavior, interaction with staff. So they said that it may be possible that the layout may have facilitated more staff interaction. So this could be low estimate. So that's what other research should take that into account as well.
They didn't note at all, anecdotally, like it seemed like staff were more interested.
They did not at all look at staff. And then in the specific activity group, they said that this might be a way for clients to demonstrate preference, right? Because they can go to the activity and sit down. And that may demonstrate more preference, the actual response of sitting at the activity versus someone saying, oh, I like dominoes or I like magazines, when you may have used to like that, but now you don't like it anymore. So that's one thing that they noted that was nice. And then they said, I like what they said, previous research looked at providing coffee and cookies to promote happiness and interaction. And that worked. And I'm like, yeah, it did. Who doesn't like cookies? So
put them on the activity table, and then you got dominoes and cookies. Hooray.
Like the best. They did say that you're still going to need staff engagement to increase the probability of overall participant engagement. And they recommended that it might be beneficial to have a room or activities manager for like that specific time where it is that person's job to go around and at least prompt or praise, activities for each of the people in the room. One of my favorite take-home points of this article is they so very clearly stated, decisions should be made on data and not opinion.
But I like my opinion, Jackie. I think it's great.
Yeah, well, so does everyone else, but data are important. Here's some things that I was thinking about when I read this article. Do you think changing the layout each day was disruptive for the clients? If they already have dementia, I have read in the past that you want to keep things the same so that it increases the likelihood of remembering. But if you're changing the layout of the room like twice a day, do you think that's like disruptive? I don't know.
It would depend on how much of, being in the lounge, how much individuals were already being in the lounge. Because it certainly could have been an area that no one ever really went to or they went to sporadically. So the fact that it was changed didn't really affect what you'd consider a routine or something they were counting on to be the same. And it was just nice to have, novelty. Just because an individual is dementia doesn't mean that they might not like something that's new in the environment.
It may also be better, right? Because there was 0 indices of happiness with the chairs around the edge. So anything's better than nothing.
I mean, I suppose it would be a different study if it was, we changed the layout of their bedroom or like where all their items were for ADLs every day to see which was the happiest. That would probably be more disruptive because it would be to any individual.
Yeah.
But, perhaps they weren't as concerned about that with the lounge because it was just not.
And that was just an artifact of analyzing these different conditions. Like, that's not their recommendation, is to change it every day.
Change the room every day.
No. They said, these are things that you should think about.
Right.
They even promoted you maybe could have both, right? Which is when one of the rooms, when I was voting, I noticed there was a puzzle table with chairs around it. There was also like a little like living room set up where there was 2 chairs facing one another, right? So you could.
Nice.
Yeah.
So they read this article.
Yeah, they read it. And then I was wondering if there's been any research done on indices of happiness with like kids visiting. like nursing homes.
The nursing homes?
yeah.
Right? Because like there's like a big movement around, child daycare settings now that you have the intergenerational component, right? Where there's a daycare within the nursing home and it's supposed to benefit both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wondered if anyone has any data to support that. I know that there's some out there, but I just haven't found it and what exactly they're looking at. That might be cool to look at. Like,
I always sort of assumed that there'd be a process, especially with young children, of normalizing those settings because they can be scary.
mm-hmm.
I know when I've, visited, my grandmother was in a home, it was, even as an adult, I'd sometimes be a little scared or someone would come talk to me and I'd be scared. Like, am I going to say the wrong thing? Are they confused? Like, am I going to make them sad? It's a bit nerve wracking, especially as a child. You see a lot of people who are getting medical procedures done or who have, medical equipment that they're bringing around with them. I don't think it would ever hurt to make that something that like kids should see.
I used to hang in a nursing home a lot.
Like with your hooligan friends, you guys just like hung out skateboarding out front.
No, skateboarding inside. Hey, Graham to Tan, this is where the candy's
Go to
at.
bed, old man. We're partying in the hallway.
This is where the candy's at.
I tripped over these
I love
chairs.
some hard candy.
I do. The Werthers are here. Not anymore. If you guys have seen recent television commercials, Werthers is now cool again. They no longer promote.
really?
They no longer promote that they're the grandma and grandpa candy.
What?
Yeah,
Why are they cool?
I don't know. They just have cool commercials now. They're rebranding.
Guess their market for
Yeah.
elderly people only can last so long.
Boom.
Boom.
That's all I have.
Cool. All
That's
right.
a good one.
That's 3 articles. And normally on Grab Bags, we do not do a dissemination station because the articles often have nothing to do with one another. So what is
that's
the
okay.
giant take-home point? It's just have fun, read some research. It's always a good time. Although I hope you guys did pick up on the segues from undergraduate college students in their reusable bags to college student conversational skills to conversational skill, attempts to improve in the nursing home environment. Really ran the gamut. Whoa.
The lifespan, one might
The
say.
lifespan. And that brings us to the end of another grab bag. So we're going to tie up the bag. We're going to throw it all in the fire and let all the articles burn.
Now we're just going to jettison it into space.
Oh, we'll jettison it into space. Yes. And that'll bring us to the end of the episode. Aww. Before we go, I want to make sure everyone hears our second secret code word, and it is buzz. B-U-Z-Z. Like a joy buzz or Buzz
Lightyear.
Aldrin or Buzz Lightyear, all related to space. Jackie, can you, because I don't know this because I've asked her a bunch of times, who were the first 3 astronauts to go to the moon? Or the 3 astronauts in Apollo 11, only 2 of which got to walk on the moon.
Neil Armstrong.
Yep.
Not a girl.
Not in Apollo 11, no.
I don't know.
Oh.
I know Neil Armstrong.
It was Buzz Aldrin, was the
Okay.
other man to walk on the moon.
Oh, yeah, but he died.
Neil Armstrong died.
Oh, yeah.
And Michael Collins.
Michael Collins.
He had to stay up in the main ship. Those are your astronauts. But anyway, Buzz. If you send us all 3 astronauts, good for you. But we only need Buzz. Oh, well. Thank you guys for joining me for another fun grab bag. I hope you had as much fun as I did, and we hope our listeners all had a good time too. If you did, why not subscribe to ABA Inside Track? Maybe leave us a little review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or, wherever you got this here podcast. There are a lot of other ways you can get in touch with us. You can go to our YouTube page where we post these episodes as well as our preview videos. You can go to our website, abainsidetrack.com, where we have links to all of the articles that we discussed and where you can find the Get CEU tab. You can certainly find us on social media. We're pretty much everywhere as ABA Inside Track. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And of course, you can feel free to email us the old-fashioned way at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro and outro music, to Kyle Sturry for our interstitial music, to Daniel Thabit from the Podcast Doctors for his great editing work, and to Hollis Irvin from the Sycamore Workshop for his help with visuals and pictures and whatnot. We'll be back next week with another full-length episode, but until then, keep responding. Bye!
Bye!